had no reason to suspect anything that night. The party was supposed to be just another get-together with friends, a casual evening of drinks and laughter. My wife, Laura, had been excited about it for weeks, picking out her dress, discussing the guest list, and reminding me repeatedly that we should arrive on time. She was glowing when we walked in, her red dress hugging her curves in all the right places. People greeted us warmly, handing us drinks and pulling us into conversations. Everything seemed normal until it wasn't. I noticed it first in the way she glanced across the room. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe she was just looking for a friend, scanning the crowd. But then I caught the way her expression softened, her lips curling slightly at the edges. My stomach tightened. I followed her gaze, and there he was, a man I had never seen before. Tall, dark-haired, well-dressed. He was already looking at her. No, not looking, staring, like she was the only woman in the room. Then came the moment that sent ice through my veins. Laura's phone lit up in her hand. She glanced down, read something, and a ghost of a smirk crossed her lips. She turned to me, forced a casual smile, and said, "I'm just going to grab another drink." She walked off without waiting for my response. I wasn't a fool. I knew something was off. My gut screamed at me to follow, but I forced myself to stay still. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband. So instead, I wandered toward the bar, making casual conversation but keeping an eye on her. And then I saw it. Laura wasn't getting a drink. She was talking to him. No, more than talking. She was close to him, her body angled towards his, her eyes flicking up at him with an expression I hadn't seen in years. I gripped my glass tighter. I tried to convince myself it was innocent. Maybe it was just a flirty conversation, meaningless. But then his hand brushed her arm, and instead of pulling away, she leaned in. Something inside me shattered. I watched as they slipped through a side door, disappearing from view. At that moment, my vision blurred. My heart pounded in my ears, a deafening drumbeat of rage, disbelief, and humiliation. I could have followed them. I could have made a scene. But I didn't. I put my drink down, straightened my jacket, and walked out, silent, expressionless. By the time dawn came, she would be in tears, and it wouldn't be because of me. I stepped out into the cool night air, my breath slow and controlled despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. The party lights flickered from the windows behind me, laughter and music carrying into the street like nothing had happened, like my entire reality hadn't just shifted. I could have turned back. I could have stormed inside, ripped open that door, and let the world see what kind of woman Laura had become. But I didn't. There was something far more powerful in leaving. So I walked. I wasn't thinking about where I was going, just that I needed to get away from there. Every step felt like tearing myself away from a life I had been too blind to see for what it was. A facade, a performance. Somewhere along the way, I ended up at a small diner, the kind that stayed open late for the drunks and insomniacs of the world. I pushed through the glass doors, the bell jingling overhead, and took a seat by the window. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, slid me a menu, but I wasn't hungry. "Just coffee," I murmured. She nodded, disappearing behind the counter. That's when I pulled out my phone. Laura hadn't texted. Not once. No, where are you? No, are you okay? Nothing. But then again, why would she? She was busy. I gripped my coffee cup tighter, feeling the ceramic warm against my palms. The anger in me simmered, not the kind that explodes, but the kind that sits deep and slow, waiting. I could have called her. I could have demanded an explanation. Instead, I opened our shared phone account, something I rarely checked. I scrolled through the records, and there it was, a number. One that had appeared again and again over the past month. Calls, texts at odd hours, including late at night when she had supposedly been asleep. I copied it, saved it, and set my phone down, staring at the reflection in the window. I looked different, like a man who had just woken up from a dream and realized it had been a nightmare all along. The waitress came back, refilled my cup without asking, and lingered for a second. "You all right, Han?" she asked. her voice lined with that motherly concern strangers sometimes offered when they sensed something was wrong. I met her eyes, and for the first time that night, I let out a slow breath. Not really. She gave a small nod, as if she understood, then walked away. I stayed in that diner for hours, long enough to watch the nightlife die down, the streets emptying until only the occasional car passed by. Long enough for my thoughts to stop racing and settle into something sharper. I wasn't going home. Not yet. I paid my bill, left a tip, and stepped back outside, the crisp air hitting me like a slap. I checked my phone again. Still nothing from Laura. She didn't know I was gone yet. That meant she was still with him, and that thought sent a cold, detached kind of resolve through me. I hailed a cab, gave the driver an address I had never needed to know before tonight. The address of the man whose number was all over my wife's call logs. I didn't know what I expected when I got there. A confrontation, a moment of clarity. I just knew I needed to see. And when the cab pulled up outside a sleek apartment complex, I realized something that made my stomach turn. This wasn't just some random guy, because I recognized the car in the lot. It wasn't hers. It was his. Someone I knew. Someone close. And suddenly, the betrayal cut even deeper. The street was quiet, lined with parked cars, their windshields catching the dim glow of streetlights. My cab pulled up to the curb, and I just sat there for a moment, staring at the sleek black sedan parked outside the apartment complex. I knew that car. No, there was no way. I leaned forward, my pulse hammering in my ears. This wasn't just a stranger Laura had been sneaking around with. That was Eric's car. Eric, my friend. No, more than a friend. The guy I had trusted for years, the one who had been at our wedding, who had been there through every milestone. We had spent holidays together, shared drinks after long days, laughed about the stupidity of life. And now, here I was, staring at his car parked outside the building where my wife had disappeared for the night. A slow, sick feeling crawled through me, the kind of betrayal that didn't just sting, it hollowed you out from the inside. The cab driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror. "You need me to wait?" I almost said yes, almost told him to keep the meter running, that I wasn't going to be long. But instead, I shook my head. "No, I'm good." I paid him, stepped out, and stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the cold night air like it might somehow clear my head. I didn't know what I was going to do, but my feet moved on their own. The building had a secure entrance, but that didn't matter. I knew the code. Eric had given it to me years ago, back when we were actually friends, back when I thought he was someone I could trust. I punched in the numbers, the lock clicked, and I stepped inside. The hall was quiet, the kind of stillness that only existed in places where people were supposed to be asleep. But I wasn't here to sleep. I wasn't here to wait either. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button for the third floor, and leaned against the metal wall as it climbed. My thoughts were a storm of rage, disgust, sadness, disbelief. But through it all, there was something else, too. A twisted kind of calm. When the door slid open, I stepped out, turned down the hall, and found the door. His door. And I knocked. I don't know what I expected. Maybe for no one to answer. For them to be too wrapped up in whatever betrayal they were indulging in to hear. But I barely had time to take a breath before the door unlocked. And then it swung open. And there he was. Eric. His hair was tousled, his shirt unbuttoned at the top, and the second he saw me, his face paled. He froze, gripping the door handle like he wasn't sure whether to let go or slam it in my face. And then, from behind him, I heard her. "Babe, who is it?" "Babe." I didn't even have time to process the way my stomach twisted before she appeared. Laura, my wife, wearing nothing but his oversized dress shirt, sleeves rolled up to her elbows. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was like the world itself had paused. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in the span of a second. Confusion, realization, panic, guilt, and then, finally, fear. I had never seen Laura afraid before. She opened her mouth, probably to say something, to start spinning some web of lies, but I held up a hand, stopping her before she could even try. "Don't." Just one word, but it was enough. Because she knew. She knew there was nothing she could say that would fix this. Eric exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Listen, man." I laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh. It was something hollow, something bitter. "Don't. Just don't." I looked at him, at her, at the apartment that smelled of expensive cologne and betrayal, and something inside me clicked into place. I had been played for a fool, but not anymore. I took a step back, exhaling slowly. Laura reached for me. "Wait." I shook my head. "I hope it was worth it." And then I turned around and walked away. I didn't hear her footsteps at first, but as I reached the elevator, they came, fast and desperate. "Please, just talk to me." I stepped inside, met her frantic gaze as she stood just feet away, and let the doors slide shut between us. And the last thing I saw before they closed completely was the tears in her eyes. I stepped out of the building, the night air colder now, biting at my skin like it was trying to wake me up from a dream. But I wasn't asleep. No, this was more real than anything I had felt in years. The weight pressing on my chest wasn't shock anymore. It wasn't even sadness. It was clarity. I walked down the sidewalk, my thoughts sharpening with every step. I had walked away from my marriage tonight, from the woman I had trusted, from the man I had called a friend. And strangely, I didn't feel broken. Not the way I thought I would. I wasn't crumbling. I was changing. I pulled my phone from my pocket, staring at the black screen. A part of me expected Laura to be blowing it up by now with texts, calls, frantic messages begging me to listen. But it was silent. She knew. She knew that for the first time since I had met her, she had no control over me anymore. I walked to the end of the block, flagged down a cab, and climbed in, giving the driver an address I hadn't visited in years. My brother's place. It wasn't that we were estranged. We just lived in different worlds. He had always been the reckless one, the guy who didn't care about stability, who bounced from job to job, woman to woman, city to city. And I had been the opposite. The responsible one, the settled one, the guy who did everything right. And look where it had gotten me. The ride was quiet except for the low hum of the radio. I leaned my head back, staring at the blurred street lights outside, my body exhausted but my mind wide awake. I kept replaying that moment in Eric's doorway, the way Laura looked at me, the way Eric didn't even try to hide the guilt. They weren't sorry. They were sorry they got caught. That thought alone made my stomach twist, not in pain, but in something else, something colder. The cab pulled up in front of my brother's apartment, and I paid the fare before stepping out. The building was old, worn down, but familiar. I took the stairs 2 at a time and knocked. It took a moment before I heard footsteps inside. Then the door swung open. Tyler blinked at me, still half asleep, his hair a mess. "Dude, it's like 2 in the morning." I just exhaled. "Yeah, I know." He took one look at me, and his expression shifted, any annoyance melting away. He stepped aside. "Come in." I walked inside, the small apartment cluttered with signs of his usual chaos. Pizza boxes, an unmade couch, an Xbox controller on the floor. He shut the door behind me, rubbing a hand over his face. "What happened?" I dropped onto the couch, elbows on my knees, and let out a humorless laugh. "Laura." That was all I needed to say. His entire posture changed, jaw tightening. "What did she do?" I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Eric." Silence. Then, a slow exhale. "You've got to be kidding me." I shook my head. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, muttering something under his breath before walking into the kitchen. I heard the fridge open, then the distinct sound of a beer cracking open. He walked back in, handed me one, and sat across from me. "All right, tell me everything." So I did. Every detail. How I saw the way she looked at him at the party. The texts I found. The moment I knocked on his door and she answered wearing his shirt, looking at me like I was the intruder. The way she didn't even try to deny it. By the time I finished, Tyler was gripping his beer so tight I thought the bottle might shatter. "That's some next-level betrayal," he muttered. "And Eric? The guy was at our family barbecues, man." "I know." He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "So what now?" I took a sip of my drink, feeling the cold burn slide down my throat. I don't know yet, but I did. Not revenge, not some dramatic meltdown. Something better. Control. For the first time in years, I was in control. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and hovered over Laura's name. Then, with one deep breath, I blocked her. Her number, her social media, every point of access she had to me. Tyler watched me do it, his lips twitching. Damn. Cold. I looked up at him. It's what she deserves. And as I sat there in my brother's messy apartment, for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. The feeling of freedom was addictive. As I sat in my brother's dimly lit apartment, sipping on a cheap beer, I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by the responsibility of keeping my marriage afloat. I wasn't carrying the burden of fixing things or compromising for the sake of an illusion. Laura had shattered that illusion all on her own, and I wasn't going to pick up the pieces. Tyler watched me from across the room, still trying to process what I had told him. He'd always had an edge to him, the kind of guy who wasn't afraid to throw a punch when it was deserved, and right now I could tell his fists were itching. Are you really not going to talk to her? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Nope. He let out a low whistle. Damn. You know she's losing her mind right now, right? I smirked. Good. I picked up my phone again, not to text her, but to check something else. Our shared accounts. She wasn't just my wife. She was tied to me in ways that mattered. Financially, legally, that was about to change. I logged into our bank, scrolling through the transactions. There it was, a hotel charge from last week, a dinner receipt from a place I'd never been, a few too many Lyft rides at odd hours. She wasn't even smart about hiding it. I clicked over to our joint savings, and with a few taps, transferred every last cent into my personal account. It was my money anyway. I had been the one funding our life while she played pretend. Then I did the same for the credit cards. Locked them. Froze the accounts. She had no idea yet, but by the time she did, she was going to feel a lot lighter. I leaned back, exhaling. Done. Tyler looked at me, eyes narrowing. What do you mean, done? I tossed my phone on the table. I took back what's mine. A slow grin spread across his face. Now that's what I'm talking about. But we both knew this was just the beginning. It wasn't until the next morning that my phone finally started lighting up with her name. Over and over and over. Blocked calls, voicemails, emails, texts from unknown numbers, because she thought I wouldn't recognize her desperate attempts. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I scrolled through them with an almost amused detachment. We need to talk. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. You're being unfair. This is not how marriage works. You can't just ignore me. That last one made me laugh. I could, in fact, ignore her, and I would. Tyler was watching TV, but when he saw my expression, he smirked. She finally figured it out, huh? I nodded, turning the phone screen toward him. He snorted. Damn. She's unraveling quick. I leaned back on the couch, stretching my legs out. She thought she could control how this played out. Thought she could be the one to decide when and how this ended. But you beat her to it, Tyler finished. Exactly. Her desperation reached a new low. Hours passed, and then my email pinged with something new. A receipt for a one-way plane ticket. Destination nowhere near here. I stared at it for a second, then laughed. Oh, she's really trying now. Tyler leaned over. What is that? She bought a flight. Probably trying to make me think she's leaving. Is she actually going to go? I smirked. No, it's a bluff. And I was right, because an hour later I got another email. This one from Eric. The audacity was almost impressive. Man, I think we should talk. This is getting out of hand. Laura's a wreck. She didn't mean to hurt you like this. Don't do anything rash. Just be reasonable. I read it twice, shaking my head. Reasonable. This guy had the nerve to tell me to be reasonable. Tyler saw my face and groaned. Oh, hell no. Don't tell me Eric actually reached out. Oh, he did. I turned my phone toward him, letting him read the email. Tyler let out a sharp laugh. This guy has lost his damn mind. What does he expect you to do? Shake his hand? Thank him? Probably. I stared at the screen for a moment, considering my options. Then I did the same thing I had done with Laura. Blocked. Tyler chuckled. That's cold, man. I smirked. They deserve worse. And they did. I stayed at Tyler's place for the next couple of days, letting the storm rage on without me. I went to work, hit the gym, lived my life like nothing had changed. Because for me, things were finally changing for the better. But for Laura, it was killing her. And I knew that for a fact when I came home one evening to find her sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. Disheveled, mascara smudged, tears in her eyes. She looked up the second she saw me, scrambling to her feet. Finally, you're here. I stared at her, unimpressed. What are you doing here? She sniffled, wiping at her face. I needed to talk to you. I crossed my arms. No, you needed me to talk to you. There's a difference. She let out a shaky breath. Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I studied her, taking in the desperation, the panic. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. She wasn't sad because she had lost me. She was terrified because she had lost control. And that's when I knew. She wasn't crying because of what she did. She was crying because she finally realized I was never coming back. I smirked, stepping around her, reaching for my keys. Too bad. Your 5 minutes just ran out. I pushed the door open, stepped inside, and let it slam shut in her face. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I'd already won. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, listening. Silence. Then soft, muffled sobs. Laura wasn't leaving. Not yet. She was still standing outside, probably hoping I'd cave, that I'd do what I'd always done. Be the reasonable one, the forgiving one, the guy who always smoothed things over. But that man was dead. I locked the door, tossed my keys onto the counter, and exhaled. The apartment was exactly how I'd left it. Clean, quiet, and untouched by her presence. And I liked it that way. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a cold bottle of water, and checked my phone. More missed calls, more messages. I ignored them, scrolling through until I found the one I was looking for. A reply from my lawyer. Yes, I had already contacted one. I wasn't waiting around for Laura to screw me over in the divorce. I was going to make sure she got nothing. I tapped on the message and read the response. We can move quickly on this. With what you've gathered, you're in a strong position. Let's set up a meeting ASAP. Perfect. I set the phone down and took a sip of water, letting the satisfaction settle in. I had spent years being the one who compromised, the one who made sacrifices, the one who gave more than I got. Not anymore. Outside, I heard Laura's footsteps moving away, slow and defeated. She was finally giving up. For now. I smirked. She had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, I made moves. First, I went to our bank in person, double-checking that every account was secure. Laura had no access, no way to siphon off anything. Checkmate. Then I met with my lawyer. He laid it all out. Since I was the sole earner and she had been unfaithful, I had the upper hand. No alimony, no assets in her name. Nothing. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years. And then I went public. No, I didn't blast it on social media. That wasn't my style. But I did something worse. I let the truth slip to the people that mattered most. I started with her parents. I called her mother, sweet, traditional, and completely unaware of her daughter's betrayal. When I told her why I was divorcing Laura, the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. She did what? Cheated on me. With Eric. A sharp inhale. Eric? The Eric. That's the one. The silence stretched. Then, oh, she is going to regret this. I grinned. I'm counting on it. Her mother wasn't the type to stay quiet, and once she knew, everyone would know. Next, I told our closest friends. I didn't give some dramatic speech. I just dropped the facts casually into conversation. Oh yeah, Laura and I are divorcing. She's been seeing Eric behind my back for a while now. The reactions were exactly what I wanted. Shock, disgust, betrayal. People were already pulling away from her. realizing she wasn't who they thought she was. Her fantasy of being the victim in this breakup shattered. By the afternoon, the backlash had started. My phone buzzed with a blocked number. I picked up, already knowing who it was. Her voice was frantic. "What the hell are you doing?" I smirked. "Oh hey Laura. Nice to hear from you. You told my parents. You told Jesus. You're ruining my life." I laughed. "No, Laura. You did that all by yourself." She was breathing heavily now, furious. "I made a mistake, okay? But you're being cruel. You can't just cut me out and act like I never mattered." "Oh, I can. And I am. Eric doesn't even." She stopped herself. I caught that. I leaned forward. "Eric doesn't even what, Laura?" Silence. Then a broken whisper. "He doesn't even want me now." I closed my eyes, savoring that. "Ha, that's a shame." She started crying. Full on, ugly crying. "I don't have anywhere to go. That's not my problem. Please," she begged. "I can't do this alone." And that's when I said the one thing that broke her completely. "You should have thought of that before you chose him over me." I hung up. The next time I saw her, she was standing in front of our old apartment complex, clutching a suitcase, looking lost. She had finally realized what I had known all along. She had nothing. Eric wasn't coming to save her. Her friends weren't taking her side. Her parents were ashamed of her. And me? I wasn't even mad anymore. I was just done. I didn't say a word. I walked past her, entered the building, and shut the door behind me, leaving her outside in the cold, alone, exactly where she deserved to be. I didn't look back when I shut the door in Laura's face. Not once. I didn't need to, because I already knew exactly what I would see. Her standing there, suitcase in hand, with nowhere to go and no one left to turn to. The thought didn't bring me sadness. It didn't bring me satisfaction either. It just was. This was the bed she had made, and now she was lying in it. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell. Each step felt like shedding dead weight, peeling away layers of a past I no longer wanted. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt lighter, stronger, like I was stepping into the life I should have had all along. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and shut out the world behind me. And for the first time in years, my home felt like home. No Laura, no tension, no second-guessing myself every time I spoke, worried about whether she'd be in a good mood or if I'd be walking into another passive-aggressive argument about things that never really mattered. It was just me. I exhaled and tossed my keys on the counter. I checked my phone out of habit, but there was nothing. No more messages, no more desperate calls, no more Laura. 2 days passed, then 3, then a week. And then the messages started again. At first, they were pitiful. "I don't understand how you can just pretend like I never existed. You're being so cold. This isn't you. Please, I just want to talk." Then, when she realized I wasn't biting, they turned angry. "You're a heartless bastard, you know that? I gave you the best years of my life and this is how you repay me. You're a coward. You always have been." I read them all, but I never responded. She wasn't worth my words anymore. But what really caught my attention were the calls I got from other people. Mutual friends, some of her old coworkers, even a distant cousin of hers I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them asking the same thing. "Hey, is Laura okay? She's been acting weird. I think she might be losing it, man." I didn't respond to those either, because Laura was finally experiencing something she had never felt before. Consequences. She had spent years weaving her life like a spider spinning a web, always in control, always keeping people exactly where she wanted them. And now that web had collapsed. She had no control, and it was driving her insane. It was a Friday night when the knocking started. Loud, desperate. I already knew who it was. I sighed, set my drink down, and walked to the door. When I opened it, I was not surprised. Laura stood there, her hair a mess, dark circles under her eyes, a woman on the edge. But she wasn't alone, because standing next to her, just as disheveled, just as desperate, was Eric. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I actually laughed. I crossed my arms, leaning against the door frame. Well, well, look who it is. Laura's lip trembled. Please, just hear us out. I looked between them. Eric wouldn't even meet my eyes. He looked exhausted, humiliated, and somehow even more broken than she did. I shook my head, smirking. You two really are perfect for each other. Huh? Eric finally spoke, his voice low. Man, we messed up. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you don't say. Laura swallowed hard. I lost everything. My job, my friends. I held up a hand. Correction. You threw everything away. You weren't some victim in all of this, Laura. You made your choices. She exhaled sharply, her eyes welling up with fresh tears. Eric rubbed the back of his neck, looking absolutely miserable. Look, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I stopped him right there. That's right. You don't. His jaw tensed. He nodded slowly. Laura took a shaky step forward. I don't want to lose you. I tilted my head. Lose me? Laura, you lost me the second you picked him over me. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't interested in hearing another lie. I turned back to Eric. So, how's the dream life working out for you? He looked away, jaw clenched. I smirked. Yeah, that's what I thought. Laura sniffled. Can we please just... I cut her off. You are not my problem anymore, Laura. And I'll be damned if I let you think you still have some hold on me. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. You made your choice. Now live with it. And with that, I stepped back inside and shut the door for good. Laura and Eric didn't show up again. I heard through the grapevine that they tried to make it work for a while, but it fell apart fast. Turns out a relationship built on lies and betrayal isn't the fairy tale they expected. Eric got fired. Laura had to move back in with her parents. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I started traveling. I reconnected with old friends. I focused on me, and I never once looked back. Because the truth is, some betrayals are so deep, so vile, that there is no coming back from them. And the best revenge was never letting them be a part of my life again. Closing that door wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the start of a new story. My story. One where I wasn't playing the fool. One where I wasn't an afterthought, a backup plan, or a man being strung along in a game I didn't even know I was part of. That night, as I sat on my couch sipping a drink in the silence of my own space, something hit me. I was free. No more checking my phone in anticipation of another lie. No more waiting up at night wondering why my wife was working late. No more walking on eggshells, making myself smaller just to keep the peace. For the first time in years, my life was mine, and I was going to make the most of it. The divorce went through faster than I expected. My lawyer made sure of that. Laura didn't even try to fight for anything, not that she had much ground to stand on. She knew she had already lost. She knew she had played the wrong hand. When I signed those final papers, I felt no sadness, no bitterness, just relief. And then I moved on. I took a trip, booked a flight to a city I had always wanted to visit, but never could because Laura wasn't interested. I spent 2 weeks exploring, meeting people, living. I picked up hobbies I had long forgotten. I started going to the gym again, not to impress anyone, but because I actually enjoyed it. I reconnected with old friends, laughed in ways I hadn't in years. And somewhere along the way, I realized something important. Laura didn't break me. She freed me. I heard bits and pieces, not because I was looking, but because people love sharing gossip. Eric lost everything. His job, his reputation, his so-called future with Laura. Turns out, when you build a relationship on deception, it crumbles just as fast. Laura, she tried to play the victim, but no one bought it. She moved back in with her parents for a while, but even they didn't have much sympathy for her. She bounced from job to job, never really landing anywhere. And as for love, well, she lost the best thing she ever had, and she knew it. She tried to reach out a few more times over the years. A random message, some apologetic, some angry, some nostalgic, pretending like she could just walk back into my life. I never responded because I wasn't that man anymore. One evening, a couple of years later, I was sitting at a restaurant with someone special. A woman who made me laugh, who actually listened, who treated me like I mattered. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't thinking about the past. I wasn't thinking about her. I was just happy. As we were leaving, I spotted a familiar face across the street. Laura. She looked different. Not bad, not great, just stuck. Like she was still searching for something she had thrown away without realizing its value. She saw me for a second. Our eyes met, and then I smiled. Not out of spite, not to rub it in, just because I was finally truly at peace. She looked away first, and that was the last time I ever saw her. I walked away, hand in hand with the woman who deserved me, and I never looked back. The lesson? Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever could. Some betrayals aren't meant to be forgiven. They're meant to set you free. And the greatest revenge is living a life so good they become nothing but a forgotten chapter. And I was just getting started.